This time, we get to look at Rogue Secret Synergies, 4 Shaman cards, and the amazing Mage Prime, and a bunch of other cards from Ashes of Outland. Are you prepared?
This should be interesting.
We'll look at the cards for this review in just a moment, but real quick, let me note that we do card reviews a bit differently here. Rather than the standard 5-star ratings for cards, we ask 3 questions Hearthstone players really want to know. First, would the card fit into one of the current meta decks? Tier 1 through Tier 3 decks per HS Replay's tier list. So, is it meta now? This helps gauge the card's power level a bit. Second, will the card fit into a meta deck once the expansion comes out? Meaning, from what we know so far, is it powerful enough to create or support a new meta archetype? So, is it meta later? And third, most importantly, does it inspire or enable crazy, experimental, or meme decks? So, is it meme deck worthy? Each card will get a yes or no to these questions. There's a time code for quick reviews with puns in the description below for those of you without much time. For everyone else, let's get into the main reviews. As promised during the previous review, this time we're going to cover the Rogue Secret Synergy cards that pair well with Ambush. First up is one of Rogue's legendaries, Shadow Jeweler Hanar. He's a 2-mana, 1/5 with the effect to discover a secret from a different class after you play a secret. With 5 health on a 2-drop, there's a chance this will get to stick around for more than one turn. But most of the time, you will want to wait until you have at least 4 mana to play this with a secret to get the secret train started. I wouldn't be surprised if decks counting on value from him shadow step him to keep him alive and set up a powerful follow-up turn. One thing I would like to note is that until now, cards that generate cards from another class have almost always had the exact wording of from another class. The choice to word this card as from a different class makes me think that once you get a Paladin secret, for example, and play it, you'll have the chance to discover another Rogue secret as it is from a different class than what you just played. However, we'll find out for certain once the set is released. So does this fit into a current meta deck? There are no secrets for Rogue at the moment, so no, too many cards would have to be swapped to make this work for us to say it would fit a current meta deck. As for the upcoming meta, Tice mentioned that we should be getting 3 secrets for Rogue this expansion, so the meta viability of this will greatly hinge on the power level of those secrets. But if they are on par with the power level of Ambush, which we've seen already, paired with the card we'll see next, I believe Secret Rogue will be able to climb to at least Tier 3. So yes, this probably will be a meta later card. And memes? It's time to decorate the Christmas trees. Shadowstep, Wild Brewmaster, and perhaps some minion copy cards will come together with this to help ensure that our opponents have to second guess every single play they try to make. It'll be fun to see what peculiar patterns we can decorate our hero portrait with. And if you were wondering if it's a mistake to support the Rogue archetype as meta viable, take a look at this next card real quick. Blackjack Stunner is a 1-mana 1/2 with a battlecry that if you control a secret, return a minion to its owner's hand. The minion costs 2 more. This is Sap plus Freezing Trap on a 1/2 body for a discount. The requirement is a bit of a challenge and ensures this can't come down too quickly, but this even gets to target minions that can't be targeted by spells or hero powers and lets you choose the minion. As the only secret we've seen thus far, Ambush, is likely to be triggered right away, you'll either want to play a secret on the same turn as this, or hopefully there will be other secrets with a chance to stick around a little bit longer to activate this. While this has the same stats as Pharaohcat currently played in most Rogue meta decks, without the effect, it would not be run. So it would not be a meta now card, as there aren't any secrets for Rogues yet. However, this is an amazing combination of effects for 1 mana. With a fairly simple and cheap setup that Rogues will likely be happy to do anyways, as long as the other secrets aren't terrible, so this should definitely see play in an upcoming meta deck. As for memes, this can help protect our Shadow Jeweler Hanar for even more Christmas tree value. So yes, it is meme deck worthy as well. Let's jump back to the only Demon Hunter card for this review, Imprisoned Antian. It's a 5 mana 10/6 demon that starts as dormant for 2 turns and awakens to deal 10 damage, randomly split among all enemies. When we reviewed Imprisoned Observer for mages during the first review, I noted that players may be hesitant to play minions onto the board when it was waiting to go off. Well, this guy makes that even more frightening, but if the opponent doesn't play anything into this, all 10 damage can go face. If that weren't frightening enough, this guy has 10 attack on a decent body to follow up. It's slow tempo, but it becomes an oppressive damage tool. As long as demon hunters can survive the tempo loss, this will be an amazing play. If a minion with an effect like this could see play at the moment, it probably would. But we can't divide by 0, so this gets a bunch of asterisks. As for the upcoming meta, I'm pretty sure it will see play in a meta deck or 2, even with the slow tempo drawback, just because such an effect and massive minion will help clear opposing threats and help close out the game when this awakens. This is also a significant threat to join our massive demons demon hunter deck that can draw this out with Pit Commander. Although the archetype has gotten a few more tools with recent announcements, I think it will be relegated to meme decks. There still doesn't seem to be a dormant keyword synergy card, so Big Demon is the only direction this really has for memes at the moment. If too much support shows up, this might be difficult to maintain meme status. Demon Hunter will get a few sizable minions, but what about Druids? Well, Druids will get to start their late game dominance with Marsh Hydra. Marsh Hydra is a 7 mana 7/7 rushing beast that adds a random 8-cost minion to your hand after it attacks. So if you draw this, you know you have a good turn 7 play, and most likely a good turn 8 play to follow up. If your opponent doesn't kill this off right away, this minion will provide runaway value generation to help you close out the game. This is way too expensive for Token Druid, and doesn't fit well into Quest Druid. But would Embiggen Druid run it? A 9/9 rush minion for 8, or an 11/11 for 9 mana with an upside is pretty appealing. But this would harm the Witching Hour pool Winged Guardian currently counts on, and it is targetable, making it less exciting for the cost than a lot of their other minions. I don't think this would actually help the deck, as they usually aren't hurting for expensive minions to drop and pressure opponents. Surprisingly, this would not be a meta now card. As for the new meta, this would fit really well into a regular Big Druid as an excellent value generator, but I don't know that regular Big Druid can compete with Embiggen Druid as an archetype. Embiggen Druid will lose Leroy, Ziliax, Snip Snap, and Witching Hour. That's it. We have a while before Embiggen can stop frustrating the latter. That being said, Marsh Hydra is an expensive replacement for any of those. If the meta slows down a lot and more value is needed, perhaps this will become a one-of inclusion in some versions, but at the moment, that doesn't look likely. I think this falls just short of new meta viability as well. We could make a ramp-heavy, rush the enemy with dragons and beasts version of Embiggen Druid. It would probably be the only version of Embiggen Druid I'm okay to play without hating myself. And the random 8 drops might be just spicy enough to eke this into meme-worthy territory, but it doesn't quite get there with what will be available in Standard. Now, if Star Aligner were still in Standard, that would change the story, but I can't give this meme deck worthy status at the moment. Next up is the Prime for Mages. Did you think Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron was a fun, we've got nothing to lose, so we might as well card? Well, Astromancer Solarian is here to swing the odds in your favor. She's a 2 mana 3/2 legendary with spell damage +1 and the death rattle to shuffle Solarian Prime into your deck. Solarian Prime is a 7 mana 7/7 demon with spell damage +1 and a battlecry to cast 5 random mage spells which target enemies if possible. These 7/7 minions are really making me miss Star Aligner already. Anyways, the first half of this feels fine to play, but the second half feels great. Unless she casts Rolling Fireball on herself after clearing the opposing minions, or fatigues you to death with a bunch of arcane intellects, she'll feel great to play, and you'll usually have a 7/7 body that felt like she was free to play. With effects this powerful, she would easily find a home in Highlander Mage, perhaps even as a replacement for Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron. It does take getting her prime back to make her amazing, but I'm certain she would make the cut. As for the new meta, yes, she'll make the cut there too. Highlander Mage will morph some, but with Zephyrus, Reno, and Dragon Queen Alexstrasza still in rotation, Mage will be looking for some powerful replacements. This may also help a Burn Mage climb its way back into the new meta. And paired with Imprisoned Observer, we have the clear beginnings of an almost certainly laughably weak Demon Mage. We can probably spice it up with an Elemental Demon Mage, allowing Violet Spellwing and Mana Cyclone to provide some synergy opportunities for her spell damage. Or we could go a Hunger Games route, generating a bunch of random spells and claiming that the odds are ever in our favor. Astromancer Solarian can meme too. Speaking of odds, now that Prismatic Lens is rotating out of Standard, meaning no more gambling with Tip the Scales, what are the chances of Murloc Paladin making a comeback? This next card might provide some bait for the archetype. Underlight Angling Rod is a 3-mana 3/2 weapon with an effect that after your hero attacks, it will add a random Murloc to your hand. A 3-mana 3/2 weapon is not terribly exciting, and random Murlocs are unreliable. The high roll for this weapon will be getting an Underbelly Angler so you can chain Murlocs like Shamans can. This card has zero chance in a current meta deck, as the only Paladin meta deck is Mech Paladin, and the mechs would gang up on this to disassemble it for parts. I was going to say that this has just as much chance in the upcoming meta, but there were 2 Murlocs announced as this is being written. If a few more Murloc synergy cards are announced, perhaps there's a chance Murloc Paladin can make a comeback and use this card? However, even with the 2 new cards, I don't think this gets there. Underlight Angling Rod is not a meta later card. As for memes, this is just what we needed for our Dragon Murloc deck. The oceans and skies will unite to take over the land-dwelling memes. If any of you played World of Warcraft during Burning Crusade and worked to get a Nether Drake, you'll remember the Boomerang this next minion is holding. Dragon Maw Overseer is a 3-mana 2/2 with the effect to give another friendly minion +2/+2 at the end of your turn. This is a partially upgraded version of Shadow Ascendant from Knights of the Frozen Throne. If you can stick minions to the board and keep this guy going, the buffs would feel pretty good. However, aside from Cobalt Scalebane, end of turn board buff effects haven't had much success in competitive decks. This is too slow for the game plan of Combo Priest, and Resurrect Priests would shun this card, so it's not a meta now card. As for the upcoming meta, we've hardly seen any Priest cards yet, but this needs some serious support to have any chance of seeing play. With what we have thus far, Dragon Maw Overseer can't survive the upcoming meta either. As for memes, sure, we'll build a Resurrect Priest with Grave Runes to see if we can flood the board with a bunch of Boomerang buffing Overseers. Without a board clear from our opponent, things could get pretty interesting. We've got several cards to look at for Shaman. The first is Bogstruck Clacker, a 3-mana 3/3 with a battlecry to transform adjacent minions into random minions that cost 1 more. A few months ago, we got to experience what it was like to have Evolve back in Standard, and it was powerful. Explosive Evolution hasn't gained much traction since its release, but this effect hits 2 minions and has a nice 3/3 body to make it feel quite a bit better. This wouldn't be terrible in Aggro Overload Shaman, as they are often able to generate a fair number of tokens, but in most cases, every other card in the deck would be more immediately impactful to the game than using this minion. However, it looks as though Galakrond Quest Shaman has just barely climbed into Tier 3, and they might actually consider using this. Dropping Bogstruck Clacker on a Devoted Maniac or Corrupt Elementalist would feel great, and the deck has plenty of token generation tools. Doubling the Battlecry would also allow for increased value in the mid to late game. This could actually see play in that deck. As for the future meta, doubling the Battlecry on this is appealing, and Shaman has always been decent at creating wide boards this could target. Other than the next card, there doesn't seem to be much support coming for an Evolve archetype, but as just a decent Battlecry minion that can help some minions get some extra value after taking trades, this might get to join upcoming meta decks. With the next card and Explosive Evolution, we can turn several boards of Desert Hares into random higher cost minions to see if they are fit enough to survive. The RNG factor and lack of meta viability of this Darwinian deck is sufficient to qualify it for meme status. The other Shaman card with an evolve-like effect is Bog Spine Knuckles, a 5-mana 4/2 weapon with an effect to transform your minions into random ones that cost 1 more. The turn you play it, if you have a minion or 2 still on the board, you'll be getting decent value, and if you can fill the board the following turn to evolve several minions, you're getting great value from this. Expecting 2 turns of huge value may be a bit too greedy with this, but if you want to test the likelihood that your opponent has weapon removal, or Zephyrus for weapon removal, go for it. But really, this is a pretty impressive effect for 1 mana more than most 4/2 weapons are costed. However, I don't think this one would make the cut for Aggro Overload or Galakron Quest Shaman, as the tempo is way too low and the evolve effect hitting more than a couple minions in Galakron Shaman will be difficult to pull off. And Zephyrus will still be in the meta to destroy this if an archetype like this becomes popular, so hoping for full value from this effect probably won't pay off. If another few Evolve Synergy cards are released, or at least a quality token generator in addition to Desert Hare comes with the set, the prospects might get better, but I fear the future meta outlook doesn't look good at the moment. But as mentioned with the previous card, we'll build an RNG evolution deck to see what bizarre results we get with this. Also, while counting on Horde Pillager re-equipping this in the meta would be unreliable, and hasn't worked out for other fun Shaman weapons, it will keep the evolves rolling, making for some really fun games. Meme times shall be had. So, since Shaman hasn't been in such a strong spot since they got nerfed into the ground after the last expansion came out, and their prime doesn't seem nearly as exciting or reliable as the other primes, surely the other legendary they get will be powerful, right? Let's look at it for a moment. The Lurker below is a 6-mana 6/3 with a battlecry to deal 3 damage to an enemy minion. If it dies, repeat on one of its neighbors. Wait a moment. I've seen most of this effect on an elemental from the basic set that almost never sees play except for elemental synergy decks. Oh right, fire elemental. But wait, that has 2 more health. Well, at least this can potentially chain to kill other minions if the board is set up correctly. So it's almost like playing Hagatha the Witch for just the battlecry and a body made out of glass. Honestly, it's not terrible, but it's a lot weaker than I would expect from a legendary. For the cards we've seen for Shaman thus far, I'm not very hopeful that they'll be able to claw back into the meta. This certainly doesn't fit in Aggro Overload Shaman, and unless the interaction with the Shaman quest is much better than I think, this doesn't get to join Galakron Quest Shaman either. My guess is that if the first minion this targets after the double Battlecry hero power is played has 6 or less health, this will hit one other minion for 3, and only chain if the second minion it hits has 3 or less health. If it actually hits the second minion for 6 damage as well, then this card would be quite a bit more powerful than I'm giving credit at the moment. Based on our assumptions about how the Battlecry works, even if doubled, and the other cards that have been released thus far, it doesn't look as though there's much to expect from this guy. The flavor text says, "Throw it back! Throw it back!" And I fear a number of players may have that reaction when opening this, as it is unlikely to find a place in the new meta either. We'll certainly test the assumptions with this once this set comes out, but there are no tribal tags or ways to increase the Battlecry damage other than doubling it. And of course, we could bounce this guy with a Brewmaster as the Bog Sloshers will rotate out, but clearing the board an extra time or 2 with this isn't really meme worthy. The fourth and final Shaman card for this review is Torrent, a 5-mana spell to deal 8 damage to a minion. It will cost 3 less if you cast a spell the previous turn. This is very similar to Crushing Hand, which we saw in Kobolds and Catacombs, but instead of guaranteed overload, it sometimes costs 5 instead. With Hagatha the Witch rotating out of Standard, getting a consistent supply of spells to discount this will be difficult. So rather than playing a spell in anticipation that this will be needed next turn, it will more likely be a fortunate coincidence that this happens to be discounted when the opponent plays a big minion, and this is needed. However, 8 damage to a minion for 5 mana with the occasional upside that it can be played for less is still pretty good in a control style of deck. Overload Aggro Shaman wouldn't use this, and Galakrond Quest Shaman is happy to send a few invoked elementals into something rather than taking up a card slot for this, so this would not be meta now. As for the future meta, if an excellent control shaman develops without Hagatha the Witch and Shudderwalk in standard anymore, this might see play in that deck. But based on the cards we've seen thus far, the prospects are grim for this card too. However, this is oftentimes a 5-cost card that can pair with the Fist of Ra-Din to wash away a minion from the enemy while summoning us a 5-cost legendary. So in a Fist of Ra-Din meme deck, we can give it a try. Okay, now we get to see the Imprisoned minion for Warlocks. Imprisoned Scrap Imp is a 2-mana 3/3 demon that starts as dormant for 2 turns, and when it awakens, it gives all minions in your hand +2/+2. Soul Infusion, Spirit of the Bat, and even Grim Rally will all be rotating to Wild, so there are hardly any minion buff synergies to pair with this imp. The buff effect would normally be more desirable in a Zoo style deck, but the delay on this effect and the hope to buff multiple minions matches a more handlock style of deck. Perhaps this can fit in a mid-range minions style of handlock? We haven't really seen that archetype of deck be successful yet, but it may be interesting to test out again. As for current meta decks, Galakrond Zoo wouldn't want to wait for this, and may have almost no minions in hand for this to buff when it awakens. Handlock would appreciate the buff, but would prefer to tap or remove something with Nether Breath for this cost. And their late game minions are already big enough to close out the game if they've managed to survive that long, even without sacrificing tempo to a slow card like this early on. Only 4 Warlock cards have been revealed thus far, so perhaps new cards will open some new possibilities, but at the moment, this doesn't look like it will get to join the future meta either. If Omega Agent, Hyreek the Bat, and Doubling Imp were still in standard once this hits, they'd be fun to buff with this. However, the cards that would be able to pull crazy synergies with this will all be gone. It's looking a bit disappointing on the meme front as well. The other Warlock card for today looks a lot more promising, at least for meme decks. Shadow Council is a 1-mana spell to replace your hand with random demons and give them +2/+2. You have no idea what you're going to get, but there will be a lot more demons in the game once this set comes out. If you play this, you hope that not all of them are imprisoned demons and Lord Jaraxxus, so you get killed by Zephyrus with Sack Pact. +2/+2 is pretty appealing, and if you get a number of the new Demon Hunter demons, they'll be pretty exciting, but the unreliability will likely knock this card from being meta viable. In the current meta, this would be a liability in carefully crafted decks, and unless a deck can really capitalize on these random buff demons, it won't survive the new meta either. However, if we completely fill our deck with demon synergy cards like Demon Fire, Inferno, and Siegebreaker, then hopefully whatever we draw after casting Shadow Council can make the buffed randomness pay off. We'll build a Quest Demon Warlock with all these cards, Imp Bombing, and Archvillain Rafam to take the RNG meme to the extreme. It should be fun. Of course, Demon Hunters and Warlocks don't have a monopoly on demons during this expansion. Some demons are free for all classes to use, like this guy. Moarg Artificer is a 2-mana 2/4 neutral demon with the simple effect that all minions take double damage from spells. This effect is a double-edged sword, as your own minions will take double damage as well, and your opponent can make use of this effect when Moarg is still on the board during their turn. There's so many possibilities with a card like this, but the first thing that comes to mind is a card like Eyebeam, dealing 6 lifesteal damage to a minion for 0 mana if it's used with its Outcast discount. Penance is essentially the same, but without the discount. I'm also curious if cards like Corrosive Breath will just do 6 damage to the minion, or if the way it's worded will cause the enemy hero to take 6 damage as well. There's a lot to experiment with this card. Quite a few of the current meta decks have board clears and direct damage spells that would benefit from this increased minion damage, but none of them would sacrifice a slot for Moarg Artificer to join their deck. What about the upcoming meta? As a sturdy 2-drop and the synergy with their lifesteal cards Soul Cleave and Eye Beam, I think Demon Hunters might actually run this. A lot of their card options seem overpowered when compared with this, but with how much they are going to be smacking enemies with their face, they may want all the lifesteal they can get. And when this is an option at the deck building stage, I think a few control decks may figure out some unusually impressive ways to use this Artificer's effect to help clear or dominate the board. As for meme possibilities, yes. An effect like this can definitely be used to do something bizarre. I haven't figured out any really broken ways to use this yet, but once we've had a chance to play around with this and see how it interacts with various spells, we'll make some fun experimental decks. The last card for today is Alar, a 5-mana 7/3 neutral elemental with a death rattle to summon the Ashes of Alar that resurrect Alar on your next turn. Both the Ashes of Alar and Alar itself only have 3 health, so it won't be too difficult to shut down, but with anything other than Plague of Death, it should absorb 2 hits before its ashes get blown away. This feels a lot like Waxadread, though this comes back almost immediately and can be shut down without silence or transform effects. It's a fun effect on an aggressively statted 5-drop that could high roll, but it probably won't work out all that often. Perhaps Shaman or Mage can figure out an elemental synergy to give this the last little boost it needs to become a terrifying threat, but at the moment, it just feels a bit too weak. In the current meta, the decks most likely to give this a chance are Highlander decks. However, when looking at these decks for cards around 5 mana this could replace, none of the decks felt like they would really benefit from swapping to using this card. It really is a bit too weak to make it in the current meta decks. As for the future meta, perhaps when paired with a taunt and AoE to keep the opponent off the board, this can get impressive value. Grave Runes on this would make it a headache to deal with, and we've seen the value Bad Luck Albatross has gotten in Resurrect Priest. So perhaps this could be effective when altering the ashes and elemental deaths? It's a bit expensive just to swap out an Albatross with this, and expecting too much from a one-of in your deck is not normally a good strategy. But with a few tweaks, I think a deck using this could rise in the meta. As for memes, it's time for Waxadread, Shadow of Death, Togwaggle's Scheme, Stowaway 2.0. This time, we'll have another target worth shuffling that can put more immediate pressure on our opponents. This meme deck will rise from the ashes with Alar. Now, onward to the quick reviews. Shadow Jeweler Hanar doesn't have any secrets to share in the current meta, but will likely shadow step into the future meta, and he's preparing a Christmas tree for memes. Blackjack Stunner can't stun anyone in the current meta, but she'll be bouncing minions in the new meta, and jack anyone who gets too close to Christmas tree meme decks. Imprisoned Antian doesn't get to wake up in the current meta, but it'll do a surprising amount of damage in the new meta, and it's massive enough for Pit Commander to grab it for meme decks. Marsh Hydra just barely gets too bogged down for current or future metas, and even its randomness fails to help it escape the marsh into a meme deck. Astromancer Solarian ensures the odds be ever in your favor, in every meta and meme. Underlight Angling Rod would be disassembled for parts in the current meta. Seems unlikely to catch anything in the future meta, but reels in dragons and murlocs for memes. Dragon Maw Overseer doesn't see any work in the current meta, is too lazy without support for the future meta, but can create every peon's nightmare in a meme deck. Bogstruck Clacker could help understated token generators in the current and future metas, and provide some explosive Darwinian experiments for meme decks. Bogspine Knuckles are too slow to equip in the current meta, will get broken without reinforcement in the new meta, but Horde Pillager will keep the evolution memes rolling. When looking at the lurker below, players in the current and future metas, as well as meme deck players, all chant the flavor text. Throw it back! Throw it back! Torrent doesn't flow strongly enough for current or future metas, but the Fist of Ra-Din prefers non-discounted bursts of water for its meme decks. Imprisoned Scrap Imp gets stuck in its cage for both the current and future meta, and Hyreek the Bat wonders why this imp couldn't escape sooner for his meme decks. Shadow Council is too much of a liability to survive in the current or future metas, but it does appear to be questing for an Impferno Siegebreaker synergy meme deck. Moarg Artificer wouldn't get to modify anything in the current meta, but probably will find some successful test subjects in the future meta, and with an effect like this, he demands experimentation in meme decks. Alar would be reduced to ashes in the current meta, but it has potential to burn bright in the upcoming meta, and this will help a Togwaggle Scheme Stowaway meme deck rise from the ashes. And that's a wrap. There are a ton more cards that have been revealed, and we'll be covering them soon. If you enjoyed, be sure to tap that like button, smash that subscribe button, and share your perspective in the comments below. You're awesome. Thank you for watching, and have an awesome day.